Good afternoon and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We're broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is all about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues, primarily self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com, and on the American Guns and Glory Network. It's also on YouTube separately and numerous other media. A new show is posted every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, except today we're doing it on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. It encompasses about 23 stations now throughout Nevada. Questions and comments, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com. Again, that's bob@firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my office recorder, 702-257-1060. That's 702-257-1060. If you don't leave a message, I can't call you back. I do not have my recorder set up to record incoming numbers for your privacy and mine. So you have to leave me contact information or you'll never hear from me. Questions to our guests can be directed to the same place and they'll be forwarded to them at our convenience or my convenience, which is usually the same day. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely truthfully covered by any mainstream media. We always present a few of those for our listeners' education. They're educational if you carry a gun, if you keep one in your home for self-defense, actually in law enforcement or security, if you're around guns and may use them. This is why the show is here, to explain to you what's really going on. Most of the stories I cover are good shootings. Some are questionable, sometimes they're just plain wrong, but I picked them out because they're all educational for firearms owners. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law, so the advice given here might not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. And important here, stories are often paraphrased for clarity by me translating them from police jargon, what I call lawyer speak, and regional dialects into plain American English. The incidents are as reported, except the names of the players are omitted. My guest today is retired Customs and Homeland Security Agent Leonard V. Davis. Lenny, if you will, a little bit of your background. Been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. I've been dealing with stuff. My name's Lenny Davis. I'm a retired Special Agent with U.S. Customs and Department of Homeland Security. I've been still am a trainer for the U.S. State Department and subject matter expert in anti-terrorism. Been a firearms instructor since 1980, and I'm currently one of the owners of SRT Special Services. We're a security, private investigations, and training firm based here in Las Vegas.
SRT.
SRT Special Services.
Okay, I'm going to write that down. I'll use that in the next show.
There you go.
This first story comes to us from the Cincinnati Enquirer. A reporter named Cameron Knight reported on January 22nd this year. Police say a 22-year-old got into an argument on Monday afternoon with a neighbor over holding a common door open on an apartment building. One of the egress doors, not to any particular apartment, but this is the main door that lets people into the building. The investigators said the 22-year-old was waiting outside the apartment building on Bruxton Avenue Tuesday to attack his neighbor, but the neighbor never came out. Good idea if you're going to be attacked, I guess. They went to the neighbor's door, and when the neighbor answered, the 22-year-old, the guy that was waiting outside, started hitting him in the head. The victim then pulled out a .40 caliber handgun to try to ward off the attack, but according to the investigators, the attacker ran away. Good idea when the victim points a gun at you. Court documents say the victim chased the attacker outside the building. The two men started fighting again for control of the gun. One round was fired during the struggle, but no one was hit. As the fight continued, the victim was able to get the magazine out of his gun and throw it where it couldn't be reached, obviously. The officers then arrived at the scene and broke up the fight around 3 p.m. The victim here suffered fractures as a result of the fight and was hospitalized. The 22-year-old attacker is charged with felonious assault and is being held at the Hamilton County Justice Center on $200,000 bail. The first thing up here is obviously the fight should have ended when the attacker got away. Advice always is from anybody competent is to call 911 and let the professionals chase down the perps. I suggest saving information by writing it down in notes or making a phone video. By continuing the fight, the resident could have got himself killed, for one thing. What do you like this so far, Lenny?
Well, you hit it right on the head. As soon as the perpetrator stopped the attack, because again, the victim pulled out a .40 caliber handgun, and the perpetrator realized that a .40 caliber handgun versus fist is never a good thing. But once that threat he left, the threat's over with. And at that point, like you were saying, Bob, be a good witness. Don't chase someone down. We've seen countless cases where people, and of course it's normal, you get angry, somebody just beat you, but we've seen countless cases where people have chased the perpetrator down, and at that point they become the aggressor and they've shot people and they've gone to jail for it. This guy right here should have, the minute this guy broke off the attack, close his door, lock the door, 911, and be a good witness. Now, if the guy comes back and kicks your door in, then you're in a better position. The other thing is, they got in a fight over the gun. How many times in TVs and movies have you ever seen, you always see that there's two guys fighting for a gun. One of them doesn't, you never know who actually gets shot. That happens a lot with people fighting for weapons. Fingers, clothing, anything else gets caught in the triggers, and a gun is unintentionally discharged.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
This is, I can't believe anybody can watch cop shows on TV or watch the news and not get this. When the bad guy runs away, you're done. This would have been really tragic had this victim who did the pursuit, he is the victim. The other guy kind of becomes the victim. You switch who's wrong, and you're safe. Call the cops. Anyway, I pulled this story. I had to make a note to myself here. Where I pulled this, the Cincinnati Enquirer, is a morning daily newspaper published in Cincinnati, Ohio. They started publication in 1841, if you can picture that. It is now all run by volunteers. The person who owns the paper doesn't pay anybody, including him or herself. They just do it as a community service. You just nostalgia for the old days. You've got to pull up the Cincinnati Enquirer newspaper and check out their website. They run local stories about a duck getting stuck in a lawnmower and stuff like that. It's Americana. You got to look at it. We're going to break here for some words from a few of our friends and associates. We'll be right back. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. And we are back. This next story comes from WSOC TV 9. A reporter named Anthony Costura reported on January 21 of 2020 in I can't read that very well, Hardcoat. Wow. That's
Hill Rock Estates.
Hill Rock? Is that the name?
Oh, no, Harlot.
Harlot? Yeah, that's
North
what I
Carolina.
thought.
Harlot,
Is
North
that
Carolina.
how that's pronounced? Do you know? That's just an unusual name for a town. Anyway, in Harlot, if that's wrong, it's him. North Carolina. Police are investigating after a pizza delivery driver shot 3 of 4 people who they said were ambushed the pizza driver and tried to rob him just before midnight in the Hill Rock Estates apartments on Magnolia Hill Drive. The victim was delivering pizza to the apartment complex when 4 suspects approached him and aimed what he thought was a rifle at his head. The intended victim, who was armed with his own weapon, fired at the robbers. Police say all of the suspects ran off after the shooting, and the victim called 911, a smart victim. Officers quickly found 3 of the suspects near a laundromat on Kilbourne Drive. 2 of them were taken to the hospital with gunshot wounds, and they were expected to be okay. The 3rd suspect, who was not hit, was detained. More than an hour later, a 4th suspect was dropped off at the hospital with a gunshot wound to the chest. He is also, at this point, expected to survive. Officers who responded to the scene found the assault-style rifle the suspects used during the robbery, but when it was inspected, they determined it was a toy rifle that was painted to look like a real firearm. More on that later. The 4 suspects, aged 20, 18, 16, and 15, are all charged with robbery with a dangerous weapon and conspiracy to commit robbery with a deadly weapon. The 16-year-old was charged as a juvenile because of the raise the age law, a new law that says they get multiple racks at this if they're less than 16 or less. The 15-year-old was presumably charged as a juvenile. The pizza delivery driver was not hurt. Officials have not said if he will face any charges. I'd be really surprised if he does. The incident highlights a growing problem of robbery, specifically involving teenagers. The perp here used a fake gun. That is often a serious problem in self-defense as well as police incidents. Well, I'm going to give it to you here, Lane, and I got some more stuff.
Yeah, this is a pretty cut and dried case. You, as a human being, you don't have to go, gee, are you sure that's a real rifle or not? If you believe that that's a real firearm, your life is threatened, obviously, and this gentleman defended himself against multiple suspects. There's 4 against 1. These guys, yeah, they're teenagers, but they can pull a trigger. They're willing to commit an armed robbery, so they have to be, responsible for their actions. And if that means you get a sucking chest wound, that's being responsible for your actions. You want to be a armed robber and someone who is, legally carrying a firearm and defending their life, and they issue you a sucking chest wound, well, guess what? You deserve that. I'd be highly surprised if there was any legal ramifications against this pizza delivery man. I mean, obviously, he was in fear of his life and he defended it from a perceived threat of what he thought was a real firearm. If you look at some of these, and you can go to virtually any sporting goods store, and I've seen it, especially SIG now, they build air pistols that look almost identical to their regular handguns. So it's not unusual. I mean, you look at the airsoft guns, they are phenomenally good copies of real firearms, to the point that, unless they don't go bang, you won't know. What these guys did, that California several years ago, and several states have adopted it, if you're going to sell a toy gun, it has to have a brightly colored muzzle. Well, that takes a little black spray paint, and the next thing you know, you have a gun that looks exactly like the real thing. And in a split second, when somebody points a gun at your head, you're not going to decide, gee, is that a airsoft or is that actually an AR-15? Luckily in this case for this man, it wasn't an AR-15, a real one, or assault rifle, because he might have lost his life. But I have no compassion for a 15-year-old that decides he wants to do an armed robbery. A 15-year-old can pull a trigger just as well as a 50-year-old.
Part of the problem we have with this 15-year-old also is because, with the 16-year-old now, because of their new laws, and the 15-year-old, he could be a 6 or 7 times felon because his records are sealed. The prosecutor can't get at him. Obviously, the police can if they do a workaround, but they can't use those records in court. So we may be dealing with some really bad players here. The part of this case that what do you do when a child points a gun at you? You don't get killed, right? That's the first rule of all the rules I give you on this show, is don't die. You may have a court case later on. It may turn out it was a juvenile, but if you're dead, it doesn't make any difference. So you make your best choice that you can make, but all the rules don't apply if you're going to get killed. A little bit more on this painted gun. We've seen those a lot here in Vegas, and the bad guys will paint red muzzles on real guns to make the police hesitate. If the police see the gun pointed, they will hesitate for a split second to just, their brain takes to adjust, is that a real gun or not? And as Lenny said, it really doesn't matter, but the idea is the guy is shooting while you're still hesitating this half a second, which is a lifetime in a gunfight. They take real guns and paint them red. They take fake guns and paint them black. We've got rules in California now that was going to solve this problem where the entire gun has to be clear plastic or red.
And again,
as if the moron can't paint the whole gun. These are people trying to make gun laws that don't understand anything about guns at all, anything about criminal behavior. I was just amazed when that passed in California. Like, they think the criminals aren't smart enough to paint the whole gun instead of just part of it.
Well, and one of the things that got me, over the years is when the Cerakote came, the gun coatings came out in multiple colors. I've seen people with real guns that have made artwork, and they look like, some of them look like a circus wagon with multiple colors. That's bad because, again, like Bob brought up, law enforcement officer sees that, even if it's multiple colors and it looks like, it should be a toy, they hesitate. And that's bad. I've never really gone along with the, multicolored real firearms. I mean, to each his own, and obviously that's fine, but anybody that does that needs to realize that if they carry that firearm outside of a range or outside of their home, they may cause some problems.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing on colored guns. I have advised people for years and years that if they're carrying concealed and they're likely to trying to scare somebody away by pointing the gun, that's why I like silver colored guns. You can see them better in the dark and the guy will know you really have a gun. If you're wearing dark clothing and you point your gun yelling, "Get away from me," they may not see the gun. It is more likely they'll see it if it's silver colored. So for that reason, I like the stainless steel guns or the chrome plated guns, not because they're chrome and look cool, but because they are more visible in dark or against dark clothing. That doesn't come up very often, that the perp, if you're pointing something at him they can't see and say, "Get away from me, I'll shoot you." Generally they run anyway. It's just one more thing. This toy rifles are always going to be a problem with this stuff. So anyway, we could go on and on. I know you've been involved in incidents where we had colored guns, and between us we could go on for 3 hours about stories of somebody. If you have a gun painted in 17 different colors because it's a piece of artwork, so be it. I don't know. It's to each his own, as Lenny said. I look at those sometimes and just laugh, because is anybody going to believe that's a real gun? If you need them to believe it, probably not. So anyway, we're going to take a break here for a word from some of our friends and associates. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man. Don Green, 702-409-8239. At Ricardo's Restaurant, where you'll usually find me eating lunch every day if I could get there, they're at the corner of Flamingo and Decatur here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-227-9100. That's 702-227-9100. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. And when you do check out Battlefield Vegas, which is the most amazing gun shop in the world, that's where they sell now my logo clothing. It says Fired Up with Bob hats and shirts and all my books and so forth, where we used to sell online. So you can find them there or call them, and they will send you whatever you wish of that inventory mail order. This next story comes from KTXL TV3 News reported on January 27th, just a few days ago, in this year, 2020, in Lodi, California. Would-be burglar was caught by surprise recently after entering a woman's downtown apartment. The woman was not home, but her boyfriend was. The surveillance video showed the subject jumping over a back fence and crawling up the stairs right by the couple's barking dogs. They barked, but let him keep going on. The woman believes he stayed low so people walking by the alley wouldn't see him climbing up their back stairs. The woman's boyfriend was having a cup of coffee in the kitchen when the man entered the home. When he saw the intruder, he pulled out his gun, but he didn't shoot. The boyfriend said, "I looked up and this guy had come inside and shut the door very quietly behind him. I asked him what he was doing there. He put his hands together and prayed not to shoot him. I said, 'I'm not going to shoot you. What are you doing here?' The man said he was being chased. The boyfriend demanded the intruder leave. Turned out he wasn't being chased, obviously. The video shows the subject walking out casually with the boyfriend right behind him, still holding his gun. What the men's intentions are not clear, obviously, but the boyfriend said there's no one usually home at that time. The girlfriend works downstairs in that building at the Beauty of the Beast, cute name, pet grooming. The boyfriend followed the subject out into the alley and watched to make sure he walked away. He's glad he was able to keep his cool and that he was home and armed when the man entered the apartment. The woman said, "So I just think it's a real important lesson to lock your doors even when you're home." Duh. The Lodi police would like to question the intruder. This is another of the common cases we have of a home intrusion. I'm calling that because it seems short of a home invasion, which technically it is. But the perp's attitude doesn't really warrant me using the term home invasion. No shots fired, no pursuit of the intruder. Perhaps the intruder was stalking the resident woman. Locking your doors is certainly good advice. Chasing by the boyfriend would have been inappropriate here, but the police intervention is certainly appropriate if they can find this guy. This is really scary. I expect the individual who, if they find this guy, and they probably will, he had to have left some kind of evidence around that, but he's obviously stalking the woman. That was their best guess, but of course. So that could have been a really, really bad thing if the boyfriend had not been home. Mr. Davis.
Well, I look at this and I go, here, I'm glad the boyfriend had his gun with him. I grew up about 40 miles from Lodi, California, and I'm familiar with the area. It's part of the Central Valley of California. But this guy, this guy obviously had cased this place. He was stalking this woman. I can look at that, just from what we've read, and pretty much guarantee you that he has completely cased that place. It wasn't, he was trying to avoid being seen. He knew there were dogs there. He didn't care. All of that. So at the end of the day, it's one of those things that I'm glad the woman's boyfriend was home and she wasn't home. I myself, just because of everything, I wouldn't necessarily have told the guy to, I would have shot, I'm not going to shoot you. I would have told him to get on the floor and called 911 and held him at gunpoint. Or if you don't want to do that, tell him to get the hell out of the house, which he did. And then I'm very pleased the way the boyfriend reacted to this, because he did not chase this guy. He made sure he was off the property, and he called 911 and was a good witness. They have video of the guy. I don't think it'll be long before Lodi PD will have this guy in custody.
Yeah, not a really high-density population, and the guy apparently is local. One of the things we were just talking occurred to me that he could have done is he might have been there before and fed the dogs.
Possibly.
People will do that. And then the dog knows you as a friend, and that's why they didn't attack him or bite him, because they're waiting for their little piece of steak.
Well, and people, if you have a dog, listen to the dog, okay? If the dog is barking, there's a reason the dog's barking. Now, yeah, it could be that, hey, you know, my best buddy, your friend, and my best buddy is here. Or it could be, hey, somebody I don't know is in the backyard. Listen to the dogs. They're great early warning detection systems.
Yeah.
You know?
And they're awake at night when somebody comes in and wake you up.
Yeah, and for God's sakes, lock your doors.
Yeah, what a comment. You can check out our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen recent episodes. Please patronize our friends and supporters and mention you saw it on Fired Up when you're there. We'll be back next Thursday, the day we're supposed to be on our website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, on YouTube, and on the American Guns and Glory Network. When watching any media, just click on the word subscribe, which will appear somewhere, and new shows will be sent to your computer or phone automatically. Please forward these broadcasts to your friends. Remember, our logo merchandise is on sale at Circus, or right behind Circus at Battlefield Vegas. And we're on the Nevada Talk Network, Saturdays at noon. You'll find the stations again at KELY1230.com. Thank you for supporting Fired Up. We'll be back next week on Thursday like we're supposed to be. Thanks for supporting Fired Up.